don't know if y'all addressed this last week, but just with Numenor and the story that's going on with Isildur, I'm kind of confused at how old Isildur is going to be when he destroys Sauron. Obviously, did y'all talk about that last week or address it?
Not last week. We did the first week, but I think that's a whole. I don't see how it's possible that it makes sense unless we're at just the very end of the Second Age, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense either because Gondor has to be established in Middle-earth, which I guess it could be done in Isildur's lifetime. But yeah, it's not making that's a bit of a hole.
Yeah, I mean, he keeps talking about going out to the west, which I think is interesting that they're adding that the Valar are going to destroy Numenor, because then I guess the remnants go and create Gondor. I guess, yes, they're kind of creating the timeline of him going and starting Gondor.
Right. So why is it a hole for someone who isn't as informed?
Because Isildur ends up being the king of Gondor, and in like the great battle fights Sauron and ends up killing him, or we think kill him, and taking the ring, and then him and Elrond go to Mount Doom, and he elects not to destroy it. It's a whole thing. But like, in the Peter Jackson movies, he's maybe a middle-aged guy at that point. So that effectively means that this would all have to happen in the next like 30 years, which is a pretty short time frame, I think, for when this was set. But
well, I don't think he'd have to be 30. I mean, Aragorn lived to 200, and Aragorn was a descendant of Isildur. He still has like kind of that elven, long-living blood. So I mean, he could have been in what we saw in Peter Jackson's. I mean, he could have been a couple hundred years at least.
That's true.
So I mean, he could definitely live for a few hundred years. I mean, but I was thinking that this is maybe a couple thousand years before the Third Age.
I forget that they still have the long life. But yeah, I guess I can't remember how descended Aragorn was from Isildur, but I guess it was pretty far down the line, right?
The short answer is they didn't mess with the timeline too much. Isildur is alive at the time that they go to Middle-earth to fight Sauron, and he's still alive when Sauron is defeated at the end of the Second Age. And Isildur lives several hundred, like 400 years, 450, something like that. So I guess it does make sense.
I did not place how old he might have been.
So maybe the original film...
250 years.
Oh,
forgive me.
Maybe the original films...
a lot happens over that time.
Yeah.
Maybe the original films had him too young.
That's possible.
They probably had him looking a little bit oddly young, yeah, because I don't know exactly how long the Numenoreans lived, but it wasn't much longer than 250 years. So I will say this about the timeline. They do have to compress the Elven timeline to be within one lifespan of even a Numenorian. So for instance, the Second Age is something like 3,400 years. Yeah, so 3441 ends the Second Age. Celebrimbor, building this forge and forging, spoiler, some stuff, happens in Second Age 1500. Isildur isn't born until Second Age 3209. So we're 1,500 years apart from what's happening in the Elven timeline and what's happening in Numenor, but they have put it as if it's one time period. But I don't think it takes away too much, honestly. And they have to do it if they're not going to show, 20 generations of men.
Right. I think it's the only way to do it. I guess maybe it really isn't a hole then. I thought Isildur came early or came much later, but I guess they're just putting us in those last 30 to 40 years of the Second Age. If he was born in 3209.
They've just pushed the elvish stuff back. Like we are in like the 3200 year, but they've just waited to do all
right
of
so we can see it.
Apparently the whole history of Gondor, from them going from Numenor over to Middle-earth and establishing the whole kingdom and then besieging Sauron and defeating Sauron by cutting off the ring, is only like 110 years.
Okay. So it makes sense. Well, good. Look, we just figured it out on the fly that they're actually doing a good job.
Yeah. Então.